Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel a couple of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or two. They are still a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene and they're a very small brewery but also very experimental. Probably my favourite beers I've had from these guys so far have been the big malty ones. I had a really good Imperial Stout from them and also a really lovely barley wine actually. So whenever I see new beers from this brewery, I'm always very quick to snap them up. My only complaint about them really is that I wish they released things a little bit more often because they certainly do have the capability to be bigger than they are in my opinion. But the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that I very much enjoy. It's a beer that I have known about for quite a little while actually, but one that was released maybe about 2 years ago. So yeah, when I saw a can of this one, I really just had to pick it up and review it for you here on the channel. So very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review. And as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again. We're going to have a look at a beer from one of the now numerous gypsy breweries operating in the city. So this one comes to you from Dead End Brew Machine. It's called Dreaming. It comes in at 7.5% ABV and they're describing this one as a cherry rye doppelbock. So yeah, this should be pretty damn awesome. As you'll know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, I'm a huge fan of the big kind of brown sugary styles, the Scotch ales, the doppelbocks, the Belgian quadruples, the barley wines I guess we can count in there as well. So yeah, this is one that was right up my street. Apparently this beer has Morello cherries in it, which should be very interesting. But yeah, I bought this beer at Grunt and Growler in Glasgow. It was actually out of date. I will point that out before we do this review. This beer is actually a little bit out of date. So Jihad gave me, I think, a 20% discount or something like that. But yeah, when I saw this one, I just wanted to have it. I've known about this beer for a little while. I think it was released in the region of like 18 months or 2 years ago, something like that. But it was only like a couple of weeks out of date when I actually bought this one. But when it's a Doppelbock, it's a big brown sugary beer, I don't think we really need to worry about that all that much actually. But yeah, I've had really nice beers from these guys in the past. You know, the Nightland is one of my favourite Scottish Imperial Stouts I've ever reviewed. And then the Milo the Crusher, that's one of the best barley wines that I've ever reviewed on the channel, actually, one of my favourite reviews. So when I saw the chance to, when I got the chance to review this one, I just had to kind of jump on that actually. So yeah, very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. But yeah, this brewery have a real knack for the big kind of malty and brown sugary style beers in my opinion. So check them out if that is your cup of tea. But yeah, let's crack on with this one then and see how we get on. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Dead End Brew Machine before, and hopefully we can add some more to that list in the near future. Hopefully they'll release some new beers quite soon, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity, usually when I'm at home in the motherland of Scotland. But as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Dead End Brew Machine once again. So Dead End Brew Machine, as I've mentioned to you already, are based through in Glasgow, and the company was founded by the Irishman Chris Lewis, who is debatable, a very highly regarded home brewer. And yeah, he definitely is a very highly regarded home brewer, but I'm not sure how much of that he still does actually. I'm not sure if he would consider himself more commercial or still a kind of home brewer if you like. But anyway, you can ask him that question. But yeah, he and his friend Jake Griffith, who now owns Upfront Brewing, had won the Institute of Distilling's home brewing competition back in 2012. And it was this that inspired both of them to go on and set up their own companies. So Chris had actually started winemaking back in 2000 2008, but he said that his wine was pretty awful, but he later learned that it was much quicker to make beer, and so he went to his local home brewing shop, which it turned out was run by Scott Williams of Williams Brothers. I'm guessing that's Glenbrew through in Glasgow actually. But he was later convinced to launch his beer commercially by Derek Hoy of the now defunct Hippo Beer Group in Glasgow. They of course had their little shop, and they also had the bar as well. But Derek was a really nice guy. I don't know what he's doing these days, but yeah, it was Derek that really inspired Chris to kind of go for it and release his beer commercially. But as I've mentioned earlier, at the moment these guys are operating as a gypsy client brewery, I guess you could call them, and most of their beers were originally brewed at Fallon, which is close to me through here in Stirling, or at Drygate Brewery, which is in the centre of Glasgow. But recently they've been brewing a number of their beers at 71 Brewing up in Dundee, but also at Overtone Brewing in Glasgow as well. But as of March 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have released about 75 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, but I think there's only been a few of them have been released in cans and things like that. I think at most there's been about 10 of them have been released in cans and bottles and stuff like this. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about these guys for the moment. But like I say, Chris is a very highly regarded brewer, and I think it's a bit of a shame if they only stick to this scale, because the beers are pretty damn good actually. I think this brewery definitely has the ability, the kind of raw ability, to go bigger and get their beers more recognised out there. So yeah, hopefully that is something that happens for them over the next little while, and hopefully we can get Chris on the channel as well and do a little bit of a Meet the Brewer interview. Actually, I would love to meet the guy who brewed probably one of my favourite barley wine and my favourite Imperial Stout actually that have come out of Scotland. That would be really cool. So we'll see about organising that in the future. But like I said earlier, if you are interested in big malty beers, then Dead End Brew Machine are one of the breweries that you definitely need to check out. So yeah, that's everything I can tell you about them for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So the hops in this beer apparently are a mix of Polish and Slovenian hops. It's got a custom yeast in it, and it also contains sour Morello cherries. I can't say that. Sour Morello cherries. There we go, got it this time. But yeah, as we said earlier, it comes in at 7.5% ABV. It's a 440ml can. This one, I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on it before we open it up. I'm not sure exactly what this one is kind of meant to be, but the Dead End Brew Machine artwork is a little bit kind of abstract and things. It looks a little bit like marks on a concrete wall or something like that. I really don't know. But yeah, there we go. But anyway, you can see here, there is the side of the can where it says Dreaming, and it also says Dead End Brew Machine here, which is pretty cool. Just put my face behind it so it zooms in. There you go. It seems this camera seems to have an automatic thing to zoom into to faces and stuff like that. But yeah, 440ml can. It actually says it's best before the 14th of December 2021. So it's actually about 3 months, just a little bit over 3 months. It's the 24th of March 2022 today. It's 3 months out of date that we're filming this one. But like I said earlier, when it's a Doppelbock, I don't think we need to care that much. The brown sugary beers tend to last quite a little bit of time, and it is 7.5% as well. Not the booziest Doppelbock we're going to come across. This one at 7.5% is kind of roughly what you would expect from a German Doppelbock. You know, if we think of the Ayinger Celebrator as the benchmark, I think that one is about 7%. It's about 7.2 if I remember rightly. So yeah, not the booziest one, but I think it should still be okay. But yeah, plain silver top on the can there. I can't remember what I paid for this one actually, and like I said, it was a bit discounted. But yeah, do go and check out the Grunt and Growler through in Glasgow. Awesome little beer shop and craft pub sort of thing. But yeah, let's crack this guy out, crack this guy open, and we'll get it out and into the glass then. The Dreaming 7.5% Cherry Rye Doppelbock from Dead End Brew Machine in Glasgow. Let's do this. Oh, look at this. Now, this actually looks more like a sour beer. I wasn't quite expecting that, I have to say. Let me just pour that up to the kind of 2/3 mark there. There's still a wee bit in the bottom of the can there, but we'll put that in before we actually go and taste it. It's always nice to taste the beer with a wee bit of head, of course. That's one of the reasons why I do that. But yeah. Now, before the head disappears on this one, let's just do that first. So this beer has poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would say just kind of cream coloured head. It does have a wee bit of a kind of pinkish tinge to it, but when you've got cherries in there, that's not really a surprise. The head is just fading away to be a really nice kind of thin foamy layer at the moment, but it's got a nice kind of thicker ring just around the edge of the glass there. But I mean, look at the colour of this beer. That is a lot like, it's actually a lot more akin to some of these kind of sour beers that we've had from the different Swedish breweries in recent times. I did not expect that with it. But in fairness, this kind of goes to show you the point that I've made in a number of different videos. So as I've told you, there's a couple of different things you need to think about when it comes to the colour of your beer. So one is the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will also affect the colour of the beer. And normally with Doppelbock you don't really have to care about that, but normally this beer is going to come out like a sort of, it can come out somewhere between like a nice light mahogany coppery colour and a more kind of dark ebony, or not ebony, more of a kind of dark chestnutty type colour. But with this one, you can see that the cherries are giving this a lot of colour. This one is very akin to some of these Gose and Berliner Weisses that we've reviewed in recent times. So yeah, the colour on this one is very, very impressive. I mean, if I take it away from the light, it's actually very, very, it does look like a really kind of murky sort of dark mahogany sort of thing actually. But yeah, if we put the light through it, it's got a definite kind of, if you think about like a Gibson SG guitar, like the kind of the wine red sort of thing, it really has this type of colour to it. But yeah, as you can see, it does have a degree of haze to it, this one, which when it's got rye in it, you are going to get that. But there's one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little tiny ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But overall, this beer does look pretty damn nice actually. But this just goes to show you how much the cherry adjuncts that are in here will affect the colour of the beer. And as I've said before, when it comes to like imperial stouts, when you've got the black malt, the special B, these kind of things, they're not really affected by putting the adjuncts in the beer. I've only seen one imperial stout, and that was from Puuaste in Estonia, and they put beets in that. That was able to change the colour of the stout a little bit. But as I say, when you've got a brown sugary beer like this, these ones are more susceptible to adjuncts changing the colour. So yeah, this is quite a cool thing that backs up what I've been saying on a number of reviews. I don't just get up and ramble rubbish, although some folk might think that, but whatever, I enjoy myself. But yeah, anyway, really nice looking beer, this one. Lovely kind of rich white, sort of wine cherry kind of red to it actually. So yeah, I like the way that this one goes about its business for sure. So let's leave it at that for the appearance, and we'll have a little look at the aroma then and see how we go. So yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, aroma time then. Oh, right. I'm going to say straight away, this beer, it doesn't have the most kind of pungent of aromas. It's actually very, it's actually quite reserved, come to think of it. If I sugar it up a little bit more, you can smell, it actually comes across as a little bit sort of spicy and grainy in its backbone. You can definitely get a wee bit of that out of it, but you're also getting some really nice kind of juicy fruits. You can smell a little bit of the sharper cherry in there, but it also smells a little bit kind of figgy and stuff like this. It really does not have such a kind of pungent aroma to it, and that's just the first impression of the aroma. So let's take a closer look at that and just let's take a closer look at that and just kind of see what we get out of it. But yeah, so yeah, first impression of this is that the backbone, if we delve a little bit deeper into that, so you can smell it has got a little bit of a kind of toasty, bread crusty backbone to it actually. It really has that. It smells a little bit like a kind of, like a sort of well-fired morning roll. It has a little bit of that going on with it. But yeah, that forms the backbone of the beer. There are one or two little kind of woody sort of things going on with it, which I find quite interesting. But yeah, definitely a little bit of woodiness coming out of it. And yeah, that kind of grainy, like dry, kind of well-fired bread crust, that forms the backbone of the beer. On top of that, you definitely get a little bit of a kind of German rye bready kind of character out of it, which is quite interesting. But I'm not getting so much in the way of, I'm not getting so much in the way of the brown sugars and things like that. So I'd be very curious to know with this one what the length of the wort boil is, because one of the things I've always said with these beers as well is when you get a nice brown sugary beer, the longer you boil the wort, the more the kind of sweet brown sugary side of things becomes leathery and dry, and you can definitely smell this kind of leathery element to the beer. So yeah, when I sugar it up a little bit, I do get this kind of leathery sort of brown sugary character out of it. So yeah, bread crust, woody notes in there, a bit of the kind of straight up German rye bread, a bit of this kind of smooth brown sugary, like leathery brown sugary sort of thing. If I take the aroma in a bit deeply, you do in fairness get a little bit of a toasty sweetness out of it. So yeah, I get a lovely little bit of a kind of oily sweet. I do get a lovely little bit of a kind of oily sweet caramel out of it. Yeah, I do get a little bit of a kind of oily sweet caramel out of it, but there's also a yeah, lovely little bit of an oily kind of sweet caramel thing to it. But you also, it's just that leathery. It actually smells like quite a spicy and dry beer, this one, in a lot of ways. It's not as sweet as the kind of Milo the Crusher barley wine that we had before. So this is quite interesting. This is another side to Dead End Brew Machine's kind of brown sugary sort of things. But yeah, I do get a little bit of a McVitie's digestive biscuit out of it. That's quite minimal. A sweeter wee bit of caramel in there. But yeah, there's a lot of leatheriness to the kind of brown sugars in this one. So I'm curious to see how this is going to translate into the actual flavour of the beer. But yeah, malty wise, that's quite interesting, I have to say. Yeah, but yeah, you get a lot of rye out of this one, a lot of kind of dry, bread crusty rye sort of character coming out of this, which isn't surprising when you consider that it's described as a cherry rye doppelbock. On the hoppy side of things then, the green component is kind of what you'd expect. I mean, the Polish hops and the Slovenian hops are quite similar to noble hops in their characteristics. I don't know too many Polish varieties, maybe like Lubelski or something like this. But yeah, the green component that you get out of this one is quite interesting. I'd be curious to know what Slovenian hop they've used, because there's some really interesting ones down there, you know, Styrian Dragon, Styrian Wolf, the Styrian Golding and all of these kind of things. But yeah, the green component in this one is quite straight up and smooth. You get a little bit of earthiness in there, there's a wee touch of herbal character to it. I also get a little bit of a smooth floral note in there, but the floral character in fairness has a wee bit of brightness to it, and there's also a lovely kind of bright, smooth, grassy character as well. So I do really like how this how the green component goes together, but it smells quite smooth. And again, remember that this beer is a little bit out of date, so quite a lot of the hoppy character will have dropped out of this one, but it still works. You still get a little bit of that grassiness and floral character and smoothness in there. But yeah, on the fruity side of things with it though, you do get on the fruity side of things, you do get a nice kind of, you get a little bit of that kind of smooth figgy sort of vibe to it, which I think is quite interesting. So for me, underneath the cherries, of course, you can smell the cherries straight away in this one. So if you go underneath that, you do get a little bit of this kind of smooth, oily, figgy character coming out of the beer. It's also got a little bit of a, it also has, you know, just a little bit of a kind of, it has a wee touch of a kind of like datey, sort of a dry datey kind of vibe to it as well. But in front of that, of course, you do get the kind of juicy cherries, and I don't find the cherries overly sharp in this. You can smell a little bit of the kind of sourness of the cherries in this beer, but it's not overly pungent in a sense. I think that's definitely fair to say. But yeah, aroma wise, this is a really, really interesting beer, actually, very different from what I've had before. So yeah, kind of juicy wet cherry coming out of this one. There's definitely a wee bit of a kind of black curranty note to it, definitely some oily figs in there, and also a wee bit of a kind of datey, pruny sort of vibe too. So yeah, this beer, it's not the aromas of the other two that we had, the Milo the Crusher and the Night Land. They were a bit more striking than this and came across as distinctly more complex. This one is a wee bit more kind of reserved in what it's doing, but I think this one's going to have as equally an interesting flavour actually. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time to just mull over the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them, but I think this is going to be really interesting. So yeah, this one is called Dreaming. It's a 7.5% cherry rye doppelbock from Dead End Brew Machine, one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating through in Glasgow these days. But yeah, let's crack into this one then and see how we get on. So yeah, when I pour the last little bit, and I do get a wee bit more of the cherry incidentally. So yeah, let's do this. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Ooh, that is pretty nice. It's definitely not quite as big and sweet and sticky as the other ones we had from Dead End Brew Machine before, but this is pretty interesting actually. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So, what I'm going to say about this one is, this it is definitely a kind of more, it's a more kind of big, bready, it's more of a kind of big, bready and smooth beer, this one actually, compared to the big sort of sticky things that we had from Milo the Crusher or the Nightland. So this again, this is a wee bit of a different approach that we're seeing from Dead End Brew Machine. And when we think about the aroma that we got out of this one, it kind of makes sense actually. This is a lot more of a kind of lighter, it is a lot more of a kind of light and more easy drinking beer actually, which is quite strange to say about Dead End Brew Machine, because I think everything I've had from them has been over 7%. So yeah, the other one, the passion fruit IPA that we had from them, that was really nice as well. But yeah, this one is definitely more of a kind of bready, spicy sort of thing actually. So yeah, interesting stuff. But I have to say as well, the cherries come across as more kind of juicy rather than anything else. This beer really isn't what I expected. I expected this to be a big oily thing, but with just a wee bit, a wee bit of the smooth breadiness to it. But it really leans the other way. But I think it works. It gets a thumbs up from me, this one. Does it top Milo the Crusher or the Nightland? No, it doesn't. It might have had the potential to do that with if they'd taken the alcohol up a bit to like 9 or 10% or something like that. I could see it. I could see it kind of challenging those if it was a little bit more kind of sticky and big and things like that. But maybe that's just a kind of preconception I've had of Dead End Brew Machine on the basis of the other malty kind of beers that we've had from them. But yeah, it does something different and it shows another side to their brewing. But yeah, this is definitely a kind of quite, it is quite a spicy and smooth beer, this one, rather than anything else. So let's try and break down the flavour a little bit more for you and just describe it a wee bit more in depth. So, yeah, the one thing I will say is that the more you drink of this, the more the cherries come out actually. But I like this. This is certainly quite interesting. So yeah, let's just break it down for you and describe the flavour for you. It's actually quite similar to what I was describing in the aroma. This is one of these beers where the aroma translates into the flavour pretty well. So middle third of your palate then. The backbone of this beer, you can feel that really kind of toasty, well-fired bread crust quality coming out of this one. That forms the backbone of this beer. That's just sitting there. If you focus on that base layer, as you move toward the kind of front half of that middle third of your palate, you do have a little bit of the how would you say, you do have a little bit of the kind of woody and nutty character to it, which I enjoy. So yeah, there's a nice little bit of woody and nutty character in there. But sitting on top of the kind of roasty, toasty, bread crusty sort of thing, on top of that, you've got a little bit of a kind of thicker, you do get a little bit of that thicker, more kind of slightly sweet, rye bready character coming out of this one, and that sits there. But the malt base in this beer, I think because of the graininess, it doesn't actually feel overly thick, can we say? So yeah, you've got that roasty, toasty, kind of well-fired morning roll sort of thing. Then toward the front of that, as we say, there's a wee bit of a woody, very slightly nutty character there. You've got a thicker layer of rye bread, and I would definitely say rye bread in this one. But then on top of that, you've got a slightly thinner layer, I think, of a more kind of wholemeal, brown bready sort of thing. So that is quite interesting too. But then on top of the bready layers, you can feel that down the middle, the middle line of that middle third of your tongue, you can feel there's a sort of leathery layer, and that's the brown sugary character that I was talking about there. So the leatheriness of the brown sugar is kind of amplified by the sort of dryness of the rye bread, in a sense. But if you go into the very middle of your palate, you can feel there's a little circle there, right in the dead centre, and it's an oily, sweet caramel. Yeah, it is an oily, there's an oily kind of sweet caramel quality to this one. Yeah, there's a bit of an oily sweet caramel to this one, which I do quite like. So yeah, it's got that leathery brown sugary sort of thing to it, the oily sweet caramel on top of it. Then as you move out toward the edge of the palate, you do get one or two little hints of a McVitie's digestive biscuit, but the things that really linger into the aftertaste with this one is the kind of smooth top of the rye bread and a little bit of the leatheriness of the brown sugar in there. So this beer really does have a more kind of it's more of a kind of grainy, spicy vibe that it has. I was expecting this one to be a little bit more kind of sweet and things, in the same way that the Milo the Crusher had. This one maybe could benefit a wee bit from some sort of barrel aging, just to kind of smoothen it out a wee bit. That would be my kind of first instinct with this one. Either that, or it could be brewed to a slightly higher alcohol content and just, given a little bit more sweetness. I think that's what could be interesting with this one. But it certainly is an interesting idea. So yeah, if you're into rye IPAs and stuff like this, and I quite like a rye IPA. And you can see where this one is. You can see where this one's kind of going actually, but it just needs a wee touch of a. I think it just needs a wee touch more sweetness to it actually, which is interesting. But yeah, that covers the middle third of the palate in this one. Let's focus on the other parts of the beer. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a more kind of bready build up there. Then the base of the back third of the palate, again you get that sort of well-fired bread crusty sort of thing. On top of that, you can feel the kind of more grainy rye bread layer, and that's slightly thicker there as well. And on top of that, you also have the you do have a little bit of a more kind of wholemealy, bready sort of thing. Then on top of all of that, you've got the yeasty character. So let's focus on that yeasty side of the beer. So yeah, the yeasty side of the beer, for me, is quite... the yeasty side of the beer for me in this one is, again, it's actually a little bit sweeter. It's interesting because the yeasty side of the beer is actually a little bit kind of sweeter and smoother. It's bready in character, but it's actually a bit sweeter and smoother than the whole malt base of the beer. So yeah, sitting on top of that kind of more wholemeal brown bready sort of thing, you get this very smooth and quite bright, slightly sweet brown bready character there. And that's, forming the kind of backbone of the beer. So you can feel that on the back third of the palate, the flavour is quite tall, and then as you come further forward, it condenses down a wee bit. Sorry about the edit there, guys. My phone just decided it was going to shut down mid-video. What can you do? But yeah, we were just about to move on to the hoppy side of this beer then. So let's have a little look at this, the green component first. So yeah, the green component, from what I know of Polish and Slovenian hops, it is kind of what I would expect. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of earthy character in there, and I would say the earthiness is a wee bit more prominent, which is, in keeping with the fact that this is a rye-based Doppelbock. So yeah, you've got that in there, you've got a little bit more earthiness. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, and as you reach the front corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of a kind of brighter floral aromaticity to it there, and these kind of green components are lingering there a wee bit, which is kind of interesting, especially when you consider that this beer is 3 months out of date. So yeah, you would expect most of the hoppy characters to drop out of it, and it does have a wee bit of a smoothness to the hoppy character, but at the same time it kind of works. So you get a nice little bit of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate there. As you go round the front curve of the palate, it's a wee bit lighter and grassy as well, and the grassiness, in fairness, does have a wee touch of zestiness there, but the whole green component of the hoppy side of this beer is pretty damn smooth. I think we can safely say that. But yeah, it works. Again, it is in keeping with the whole vibe of this beer. And I would say that the whole thing becomes smoother the more that you drink of it, actually. So yeah, the way that goes together is quite nice on this one. But let's focus on the front third of the palate and the fruity side of things then. So yeah, this is quite interesting because you do have a blend of like adjunct fruit coming out of this one, and you've also got the fruits from the hop in there. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build up in there. So yeah, you can feel that little bit of bready build up. And the base of that front third of your palate again is a kind of smooth, slightly woody, but kind of like brown rye bready sort of thing. Although in fairness, you do get a wee bit of dryness from the bread crust in there too. But on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a sort of kind of black. You do get a little bit of a kind of it's almost like a little bit of a black curranty sort of thing. So you do get a wee bit of the more oily figgy character towards the back, but as you come further forward on the front third of your palate, it becomes more black curranty in a sense. So yeah, there's a wee bit of a. It's quite a dry fruity character that you get out of this one, but at the same time it's got a wee bit of an oily note. But the cherries that are in this one are interesting because they come out as a kind of impact flavour in the beginning. What you have to remember usually is that with adjunct fruits added into beers, they usually take away a little bit, they usually suppress a little bit of the hoppy side of the beer, and you'll get some fruity character around the edges of the palate. You don't get that so much with this beer, I have to say. But yeah, you get a little bit of it on the impact. You don't get so much the cherries pushing away so much at the hoppy side of the beer in this one, but when you take the beer in, you can certainly feel a little bit of kind of tartness from them, but then they become really kind of soft and juicy, and they sort of blend in with the kind of black curranty flavour that this beer has. So you can feel them on the tip of the palate there, and they are lingering. And in fairness, you do get a little bit of it just around to the front corners of the palate there. You can feel a wee bit of the cherryness just pushing away at the grassy side of the beer, but on the back sides of the palate, no, it's definitely more earthy and herbal and slightly floral for sure. So the cherry notes are coming out of this one, but they're not quite as oily and sour as I was thinking they might be actually. So yeah, they come in with a little bit of tartness in the beginning and give you a wee bit of a softer, juicy character. So it's a really interesting impact that the cherries have in this beer, I would say. So just pay attention to that if you do get the chance to try it. But I think that is everything that we really need to say about the flavour of this one. But as I said, and as I've repeated, I would say this is more a kind of smooth, bready and slightly spicy leaning Doppelbock rather than being a big kind of oily sort of one. And we have had more bready Doppelbocks in the past, but we've also had very big oily ones. So yeah, the Doppelbock can go two ways, but this one's definitely leaning more towards the kind of bready side of things. And just on the basis of the other beers I've had from Dead End Brew Machine before, I was expecting it to go toward the more oily side of things, and then the rye would just be in the background a little bit. But no, this one, the rye is quite prominent in this. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. It does work, this beer, but yeah, just not what I expected. Not quite what I expected, but I do like this. So thumbs up to Dead End Brew Machine for trying something a wee bit different. But I think this one, it would have been interesting if they'd taken the alcohol of this one up a little bit to like 9% or something like that. But yeah, let's round off this review then with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So I would say then, the mouthfeel of this one, it's pretty much right in the middle of the spectrum. This is a mid-bodied beer. The carbonation is very smooth. It actually feels really quite clean, come to think of it. So it's got a little bit of that kind of clean, typical Scottish water type thing to it. But not overly oily, not really that oily. In terms of IBUs, it's a little bit difficult to place this one because the rye is giving you a good little bit of a spicy character to it. So the kind of spice that you're getting out of this beer maybe gives it the equivalent of like a 30 or maybe 40, about 30 IBUs. So yeah, you've got a spiciness there that's kind of equivalent to about 30 IBUs. The malt base, as we said, it's a bit dry underneath, a bit smooth in the middle, and there's a wee bit of sweetness on top of it. But yeah, quite a dry malt base that you're getting out of this one. The hoppy character again, we've covered that already. And the fruity side of it's got a wee bit of oily character, but you do have a wee bit of kind of tartness in there as well. So yeah, this one, the way that this beer goes about its business is quite interesting. And you know, we've said that about pretty much all of the Dead End Brew Machine beers that we've had so far. Actually, this one really didn't do what I expected it to do. I expected this to be a big kind of oily, sweet sort of thing, and it went down another route, which I thought was quite interesting. After 3,200 reviews, you want things that test your palate, and this one certainly did that. So thumbs up to Dead End Brew Machine for that. But yeah, it doesn't quite top the Milo the Crusher or the Nightland, I'll have to say, but still a very interesting beer. So well done to them, and I look forward to trying a few more different things. I wish these guys, I would love them to do like a big 10% Scotch ale. I think that would be a really interesting experiment for them to do. So fingers crossed that's something that they have for us in the future. But yeah, this one was the Dreaming 7.5% Cherry Rye Doppelbock from Dead End Brew Machine through in Glasgow. So I think we can leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dead End Brew Machine as well. And we will no doubt return to these guys again quite soon. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.